This thing that I've seen and put together, it's literally a map of the universe from a quantum scale all the way, a map from a micro to a macro, right?
Okay.
All the pieces are there. When I'm working in this space, sometimes beings will show up to mess with me, to distract me. Now my mind is like, why do you just leave me alone, right? I'm doing the math, I'm looking at the topological space, I'm folding or whatever I'm doing, and they try to distract me. Now in the beginning I was like, this is just weird, right? Now it's like, well, do they not want us to know what's there?
Tom, how are you, brother?
Good, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing. I'm here with Tom Matt. Tom has a very interesting story, and because of what I'm involved with, I was told I was told about you by quite a few people, and then I originally reached out, and I know how it is because we're in a very very chaotic space with a lot of people constantly trying to get to us. Eventually, as fate would have it, our mutual friend Anna, she just basically introduced us, and that was wonderful. And to anybody who doesn't know, Tom Matt is the experiencer and the founder of what he now calls Upsite. And I'll do a really quick intro as from what I understand about your story, and then I'll throw it your way to give us more of a comprehensive one. From what I read about you, saw you talk about, basically you went through an incredible transformation about over a little bit over a decade ago,
Yeah.
and you essentially went through tremendous amounts of pain and turmoil in your life through drugs and even descending into some form of psychosis. You spent some time being homeless. So one of these like real hero's journey story. And during that time, you basically realized that from all the stuff that you experienced, and again, you'll give us the details, of course, all the stuff that you've experienced, there was one ability that you knew was not delusional, which is kind of interesting because people would imagine that the second you're delusional, you're delusional. It's all or nothing. And it was very clear to you, from at least from what I understood you talking, that no, that one ability was definitely there. It's a real thing. But then you realize that in order to actually be taken seriously at that point, you had to first clean yourself up, rehabilitate yourself, bring yourself back to society and all of that stuff. And you did. And sure enough, that ability that you knew was real, it absolutely was, and it maintained there. And essentially, that's the thing you call upside. And again, you'll give us the details, but the very rudimentary version of what I understand is that you essentially can pull up content, and you can literally activate it, and you can just look there, and you would all of a sudden see basically like augmented reality. You would see these things that would come on, and sometimes they would accompany your thoughts, sometimes they won't. But it's as real as what I always describe. I have something similar called a console, at least the menu part, and I always say it's almost like Tony Stark's augmented reality, like menus that just hover in front of him, like something like that. And I think it's one of the reasons that people really wanted to talk to for me to talk to you because of the differences in what they think. They think your upside might be my console. We spoke since then, and we decided we think that they might be related and probably related, but they seem to have a different presentation in the way they come on. So, anyways, that's the kind of the background as to what we're talking. We then chatted a couple of times. We hit it off. We had a really good vibe. We exchanged a lot of fun notes.
Yeah.
And then we decided that maybe it's a good idea to record one of these conversations because maybe there's some fun things in the exchange. So first of all, thank you so much for doing this, brother. And I know that recently you've been on the Danny Jones podcast, so I'm very excited for that one to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please tell
Okay.
me everything I missed.
Let me jump in. No, that was very good, actually. Let me start with just tell you where you can find the full story. So basically, a dozen years ago, I had a complete psychotic break with reality due to drug-induced psychosis. I had a successful advertising agency. I'm a dad. I've got two kids that are 10 and 12. I had at this time that I picked up again, I'd had about 5 years clean and sober. So I'd had, used drugs, got clean and sober, used drugs, got clean and sober. I was into triathlons for a while in my 40. This time when I picked up, I had a complete, slowly, then all at once, had a complete disconnection from reality. I believed my kids were aliens. I believed my business was a front for another business. I walked down on my wife and kids. I believed it so much I had to leave. I was like, listen, I know all this stuff is going on. I know I don't own my business. It's being run by some other government entity. Maybe if I get away, you won't kill me. Maybe if I just leave everything alone and just leave you guys alone, that will happen. So I literally walked out. But let me tell you, I believe this with every ounce of my being because I love my wife and kids. And by the way, we're back together. So this part has a happy ending. Horrible year. It's all covered in a book, Jesus Goes to Hollywood, A Memoir of Madness, available on Amazon. Really horrible year. Homelessness. I committed to myself to a psych ward. Homelessness again for a little bit. Finally, at the end of a year, of going through all of this, and this is a summation. I'm literally sitting on a couch, and I'm looking off one day, and looking up, and I look over, and I see these 4 holographic images. That's the best description. They're in the back of the wall, and it was 4 images. It was the back of a dinosaur, right? So specific too. The back of a dinosaur, then the cells moving through a body. I could tell it was biology. Then it was a slot machine, and the final one was the Grim Reaper.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. But if you think about the symbolism of those, I know, but if you think about the symbolism of those now, and I've had plenty of time to think about it, one is the past, one is life, one is survival, and then one is death. So there's kind of a cycle there, And also, when I was doing this, it was kind of like a drone at first, a drone image, when we think of going to the back of a dinosaur, then it was inside the dinosaur, and then it was outside. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways that this thing presents itself when it's outside of me. All right. So when we talk about what it looks like, and I'm going to talk for a little bit, Danny, if it's okay to give a couple of
No,
points.
absolutely. But just one thing. We're not necessarily in a rush. So you can give
Okay.
us more that. Yeah.
But let me set the ground so people know what it looks like. It's always important for people to know what it looks like. There was a movie called The Queen's Gambit a couple of years ago on Netflix, and the protagonist is laying on the bed, and she looks in the ceiling, and she sees these chess moves. They're kind of smoky, and she sees the chess pieces. It's very much like that, right? And it's funny that you use the Iron Man symbolism or the Iron Man images when he's in his office. It's also kind of those 2 details. Mine are typically one color, clear. They're clear maybe with a color tint. Now, I can't swipe left and swipe right and bring up another file. Cannot do that. And so what I can't do is, how Iron Man is in his office and he swipes left and right and he pulls a file up. That's not possible. Or at least not now, right? Maybe eventually. However, I can pull things up. I can pull things from the luminous ether or whatever this space is. Okay. So those are the kind of the things what it looks like. And it's really interesting too. Sometimes it can be so detailed, like I can see a circulatory system or let's say a cutaway of a 911 Porsche or anything like that. But it can't hold, number one, right? It dissolves or it moves away, number one. And number 2, it's not maybe all because it's a silhouette and it's a certain type of car. It may actually not have the parts in the right place. It just looks like they are. So that's an interesting thing to think about. Number one, how do we hold these images, right? Do we need to create a circle? I've thought about this so much. What do we need to do to hold the images? Or are they just impossible to hold on to? So those are the kind of things that I have to deal with. And if I pull it down, right? If you and I are talking, let me do this right now. Let's do this right now.
Sure, let's do it.
So we're talking about that. Let me see what I see up here. And it may be related and may not.
Hope not the Grand Reaper again.
No. No. And I have to, this is why I call it upsite, by the way. My wife named it. She goes, you look up at a wall
look up,
and
yeah.
away.
And I don't remember if I told you in our conversations, but when they told me, look up.
Yeah.
Did I tell you this part?
No, oh, you did, yeah. Okay, it's 2 drag racers. Those long kind of drag cars.
Okay.
No, that's not a thing.
So my assumption is actually what you have is probably the same thing that the console does. It's just that your brain learned how to do it. I think what the console is, because the thing I'm calling the console is just the body of the thing that appears. The menus that appear, aside from the ones that kind of hover there, they operate, and behave very similarly to what you're describing. I think because my brain doesn't know how to do that, they got a device for me that does that, that brings that thing in. And so the body of the console is always the same. So it's like opening a laptop, but then the menus are sometimes different, and some of them behave like yours. One of the things I've over the years I learned that it does work is that it has to do with training my attention. So this fleeting nature of the stuff that you're talking about, I think it can be stabilized. I think it can be stabilized in both training our attention in particular ways, and I have suspicion that we can do it with magnetism, because I saw that the some of the menus respond to a magnet, like actually glued to the magnet, which is a bridge. So either by magnetic stimulation to the brain or some play with the magnetic fields in a room. But I think more than anything, they're trying to show us how to train certain internal limbs, so to speak, that we have that we don't know that we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so basically you could rearrange, you could move. It's just that you have to focus in a very particular way. And one of the specific ways was to not blink. So like do not blink, and do not blink with your attention either, because your saccades reset, right? But also, even if you don't blink, your attention still can reset. This is very noticeable in conversation, especially if we're ADD, then people talk and you're like, wait, where was I? So this reset is the thing that you need to prevent from happening, at least from what I saw that was working, and it's very difficult. And if you stay on it, all of a sudden something extra becomes available. Did that ever happen to you? Something like that?
Now that's really interesting. So this is how it's different. So first of all, without a doubt, focusing on it, you have to do that, right? Now, when I say I can't hold it, I can hold it for a little bit, right? But sometimes it's that weird thing. It's that weird disconnect. The harder I try to hold it, the harder it is to hold. So sometimes I'll see something and I'm like, all right, just check it out for a minute. So you can hold it for 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds. And that's a long time, right?
Yeah.
Definitely can't hold it longer than a minute. So sure, there's probably a way, but I haven't mastered it. And it's maybe I would if I had a teacher. Right? There's no teacher. There's nobody showing me how to do this. I have just learned tricks over the last 12 years. Everyone always asks me, hey, teach me how to do this. Teach me how to do this. I don't feel comfortable because I haven't still mastered it. I tell people, and I just said this on Danny Jones' podcast, and I said it one other time, if you want to see if you have upside, and by the way, I have a PDF that you can download on my website, right? It's the 8 stages of upside vision. It's all the different, and it's free. So you can just, if you want
What
to.
is the website also?
It's tom-matte, matte.com. tom-matte.com. Pretty simple. So it's free. It talks about the stages because people always say I have it in there. I'm like, well, yeah, it's really, I've learned there's stages. At least I learned there's stages. People think they have something like it. So I describe the stages that I went through. It's been very helpful. In any case, this is the one trick I think might point to whether you have it or whether you can develop it, is that right before you go to bed, right, you're in that hypnagogic state. Don't do this on the bed. Just do it sitting up in a chair, like almost a meditation. You could even do it as a meditation. Try to imagine an image. If the image comes, right, and you see it holographically, you're in your field of vision, eyes closed or open. It's easier to do closed at first. And all of a sudden you see an image, you're going to think, holy cow, I'm seeing an image. This is amazing. And then you, if possible, let's say the images of, let's say, a drag racing car or an automobile, change it to an elephant or change it to something else. If you can do both those things, that is like the first step of knowing you can do it, and you can change it with the thought. Now, I don't know if everybody can, because some people have told me they can do the first part. I've literally talked to many people that sit there and say, wow, I can see these holographic images. I've tried to change them and I can't. So I know people can do it and try to change it and they can't. So I don't know. It's like singing, right? Everyone can sing, but everybody can't be Sinatra or Celine Dion or whoever, Adele. Right?
Yeah,
Look at it.
well, it's just like everything else. It's a skill. You gotta practice it, and yeah. So the question is, what is actually operating there, which is really the $1,000,000 question, right?
No, without a doubt.
Yeah.
That is the question. And I always liken it to things we know. It's like your ears pick up a sound, or our eyes are picking up something.
Yeah.
We're responding with another mechanism. It's not our throat, but there's another part of the brain. And let me tell you too, when I feel pressure on my eyes, you know how when you hold a magnet in one hand and 2 magnets, I feel pressure on my eyes. You know, sometimes I definitely feel more pressure than the others. And when when I'm projecting, for lack of another word, I feel the muscles move projecting. That's kind of wild, right? There's no doubt that there's an internal mechanism going on at the neurological level, physiological level that's happening that I can feel. What that is that's the $1 billion question, actually.
What kind of which muscles do you feel that are doing the projection? What part
So
of
the best I can tell you, like an eye muscle, a part of an eye muscle. And I've had two, my eyes are great. My doctor knows about this and everything. Actually, it's funny. I talk about this in the book. He's had other people come forward with something like this. He's been doing this 30 years. And a few of them, most of them stop because they get scared. Some scary thing will come up. But let me tell you, you can see some horrible things. Any horrible thing you see in a dream, you can see like this. You have to learn that it goes away. But then at the flip side is beautiful things too. So but he can't see. When I tried to do it for him in the office, and he can't see it with the equipment he has, right? He can't, he can't tell something is happening. And we didn't do this, by the way. We didn't do this, but I know, like, my pupils get bigger when there's something arousing or exciting. And I've told you about the smooth pursuit too.
Smooth pursuit, yeah. Just to recapitulate for people, so when you move your eyes around the room, if you just do this, then your eyes will jump periodically. These are the saccades. That's how your eyes move. But if you track an object, they glide.
Yeah.
So basically, the test is if your eyes glide, it means, at least for you, you're definitely looking at something.
Yeah.
And even if you want to say it's in your mind's eye, whatever it is, but you're definitely tracking something, which is the projection is realistic enough for your eyes to consider it as a real object versus just some kind of a when we see things in the mind's eye. This is an interesting point because I find it a little difficult to communicate because I've recently learned that there's gradation also to types of imagination, which maybe to a lot of people it was obvious. To me, it was not obvious at all. I discovered this when my fiance was telling me that she can imagine an apple pretty much in its completeness, and I said, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Yeah, I can see like a red apple." I'm like,
Totally.
"What? That's insane! Like, I don't know what you're talking like." And then she's like, "Wait, maybe is it possible that you have aphantasia?" So it's like, I don't know. And then I didn't even know it was a thing. And I think I might have like a version of that because I can kind of see a concept. Like I can see, my imagination is not that strong, which is also why I know that when I see something, it's definitely, it must be there. But also what's interesting is that I guess my tilt is in a different direction because I can see relational values very clearly. And I can't really explain it because it is visual, but it's not like you would see a thing. It's like you can see the relationship without the object. I don't know how to explain that. And that lends itself really nicely to mathematics. And I know that you've also been, since this happened to you, you really dove pretty deeply into math and more technical skills, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I want to say something about what you said because it's interesting. So my job was creative in advertising. So like your girlfriend or wife or fiance or whatever, I could absolutely see the red apple in my mind's eye. Upsite is not that. I could do that if I was driving a car and you were the passenger. I use the example because it's so interesting what this is about, what part of the brain this is. I can drive the car and I can discuss a creative campaign. I can picture the apple and drive the car because it's the mind's eye and I can see it red. I can see it green, whatever. Now, if you said, well, let's see that apple with upside vision, I can't drive the car because I'll get in a wreck. I have to focus on this thing that is external. I cannot do it. If I'm a passenger, now I could still do it in a moving object, but I can't do it as the driver. So there's obviously a balance issue. There's something maybe even with the ear. I don't know. There's so many parts. It's so intricate about how this works. And the mathematics part, without
Before you jump to mathematics, just one point on that. I do think there's another thing to emphasize there because, so I think that what you described is you give an example of where you know that there's a different effect because there's a different kind of attention required. But that's a proxy. So if we want to talk directly about, there's a way in which it presents itself. I'm certain of it, that even for people with incredibly amazing imagination, there is a difference in how things appear in your mind's eye and how something like upside would appear.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah. There's concreteness to it that the mind's eye simply does not have, no matter how crazy your imagination, I would say. Okay, continue.
No, I agree. No, it's external. This is the challenge, and it's just hard to get people to cross that don't get it. But I don't know about you, Danny, but I get every time I do a podcast, I get tons of emails about people saying they have it or some version of it, as I said earlier.
Of course.
It's because, but they've been told not to talk about it because a lot of people have it when they're younger or they went through a trauma. That's been the number one thread, by the way, some kind of trauma. And they don't, and the mother's like, don't tell people you can do that. I've heard that a bunch of times because people think you're crazy. Did I tell you about the story about the girl that saw these two fish? Did I tell you this story? Because there's somebody put
because I don't recall.
So somebody put this on my Upsite Vision Facebook page, and you can go there if you want. You can sign up. I'm not there a lot, but she posted a story that she'd put on Reddit about 5 years ago. So she had this ability when she was a kid. Her and a friend were sleeping over, and she said to her on the bed, she's like, they were 11-year-old kids or something. She's like, hey, do you ever see these things that other people can't see or something like this? And she goes, you mean like the two fish that are floating above us now? So they both saw this objectively outside of them. And she's like, yes, you see that? And they're like, yeah. So they're 11. They're like, wow, this is so cool. They played, whatever. The girl moved away. And they lost touch, and they both went through puberty, or they grew up, and they both outgrew it. But this one woman connected with the other woman, and she remembered the story, and she wrote about this on Reddit. So maybe it is a natural ability that we don't develop for whatever reason, because it's everyone doesn't have it. But clearly, that speaks to something in the brain that can do things that are outside of how typically we teach our children growing up.
I've recently heard this, but I can't recall where. Was it mentioned in the telepathy tapes, maybe?
That story?
Yeah.
No, you probably saw me talk about it.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, no, I definitely heard it very recently, not while we were talking. Maybe you also mentioned it, it's possible. But I definitely heard something like this. Or maybe it wasn't even with fish, but like a similar example of that. I definitely had that with happened to me with DMT with a friend of mine who she came over and we saw the same object. But that's extra interesting, I think, actually.
Right.
Because in the end of the day, these things. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's the biggest difference between us. Obviously, when I had this happen, I had 2 MRIs to see if there was brain damage from all the drugs. No damage, nothing. Everything's all clear. I'm not psychotic. It was drug-induced psychosis. And believe me, I believe delusional things. Like I said, those are all gone. The only thing that remains is this extraordinary ability, right? There's no more delusional thoughts or anything like that. Maybe I'm hyper vigilant or I pay way too much attention, but that's okay.
Yeah, but that's just, I feel like that's part of the big five. That's part of the architecture of the brain. You can't relate. I'm the same way. Yeah, I seen people maybe at times I can seem a little bit stoic, but inside, even when I appear that way, I'm more like you. Like it's what is it called? The forget the word right now, but it's one of the big 5 characteristics of a general architecture of the brain that you can't really eradicate. So I don't think it's even has anything to do with the drugs.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
So neurotic. That's the word.
Okay. Yeah, and so I have a question for you about the testing you've done, because like me, you sound so much like me looking for answers. There's no doubt that you and I heard about you too, by the way, on a podcast. They're like, do you ever hear this guy? He can see these symbols in the lasers. And I'm like, no. And this was going back to March and May. So it's funny that we finally connected through somebody in Australia, by the way.
I've been in contact with Anna for a while.
Right. So through Australia, that's what fascinates me. But have you tried, are all the lasers red?
No, you can do it with any frequency. It's just that red is the lowest frequency, so it's easier to
Have you tried putting 2 together to see if there's a piece of this code missing? Have you ever thought about it being something that you had in the color?
No, it's the same. It's the same code. It's the same code.
All right.
It's not in the light.
It's beyond the light?
No, it's in the surface.
Okay, so through the light, this thing projects almost like a shadow, but it's not a shadow on the wall?
No, it's super coherent. So it's like it's almost like so it's almost like the surface is only a way to bounce enough light back to your eyes to see that it's there.
The surface of what?
Anything.
I'm confused. You say if it's not in the light, where is it?
If I project the light right now on my hand.
Yeah.
Right? Or let's say a wall. Let's say this is a wall. Okay, so when it hits the wall, it's not like whatever is making up the surface of the wall and the light, the way they dance, they kind of create this. It's not like that. It's not even on the surface. It's almost like the wall is just there to bounce light back to you so you can see it. But it's
Okay,
in every point in space.
got it.
So it's in space. So what you're seeing is literally the code that is in space because there's light coming back from it now. The space, I mean space time. So
Yeah, sure.
the wall, space time is also in the obviously the wall is in space time. So you have a hard object to bounce light off. So now you can see something in there. So it appears the reason that it's a big deal, it's not because it's a cool effect. It's because the way it presents itself is so real that it just doesn't belong into any family of like hallucinations or like it doesn't look like that. It's just there. So and I'm emphasizing this because people that have never done it, and I have so many people, reaching out all the time, guessing all this stuff. When you see it, you immediately it collapses all these questions for you because you understand right away that. I mean, obviously, I play with it. I play with different frequencies and everything. But the second you put a different frequency, it's equivalent to asking me, would projecting a green laser on this mug in the dark make the mug look different if I project red laser on it or green laser on it? I'll be like, well, no, it's just going to be red or green, but it's the mug. So it's like that.
Got it.
You just project something off of something. It is there. So you just light is bouncing off of it. And because of that, it's just going to wear the color of the laser. What is interesting is that there's different tendencies for things around the code to happen in different frequencies. And I guess that is the thing that is also interesting because you see that different frequencies produce a different interest from hyperspace, let's say. So with the red one, it's mostly the code, and sometimes beings will like kind of come and look at you or look back or whatever, but once in a while. With the green, you also see these weird code is the same, but then around it is these rotating arrows, almost like the recycle bin
Yeah. Okay.
arrows. And then with the blue, the being's really interested in the blue because you see a bunch of them. They come to the source of the light. They kind of look at it. You see them as like you can see me and you.
Yeah, no, I get it. Of course.
It's crazy. Like they come and look at it, and the code is still the same. The code is constantly running. Now, obviously, people ask me a fair question. They say, "But okay, but if you're saying that there's millions of characters and they're moving all the time, how do you know it's the same?" Well, okay, I don't know it's exactly the same, of course, and that kind of analysis is going to have to be done only when you can record directly from the cortex, which eventually we'll be able to. So then we can start talking about that. But until then, as far as I can tell, it's the same thing. And what I am interested in now is to see if we can create any physical perturbations around it so it will maybe present some change in its behavior. One of the things that was promising recently is that we saw that magnets, I keep mentioning magnets, they scramble the code. If I project the laser directly on the magnet, I see scrambling of the code. I don't see the code regularly. And actually, the next experiment we're going to be doing for the movie is we're going to create a big partition in a studio. And I've actually proposed this experiment also to a physics journal. So we're kind of working on the math to make sure that it's all correct. But basically, you're going to make a very thin screen of some sort. And it needs to be completely opaque. I don't know how we're going to achieve that, but we're going to try. So both sides can't see each other at all. Then if I'm on one side, I'm smoking DMT, I'm projecting the laser from my side. So now I'm seeing the code on the surface of that sheet, whatever it is. On the other side of it is going to be a person with a magnet, and they're going to place the magnet on the surface behind. So I can't see them and I can't see the magnet. And if I can still see the perturbation while they're moving the magnet and I can point to where they are moving by the perturbation, now I'm proving to you that there's real information happening because I can see something that I'm not supposed to be seeing.
Yeah, no, I like
it.
it. It's a good test. It's a good test.
Yeah, it's a great test. And then Gallimore also said that we definitely have to do a non-magnet, and I think he's right. I mean, for the control, but I think that really demonstrates it by itself. But it's kind of the next thing. Oh, it just reminded me that I wanted to ask you, the person who you went to that has been doing this for 30 years. We do have this now very rudimentary technology where we can project what we see onto a screen. It's very basic at the moment. It's super grainy, not very advanced. Did he ever mention that to you? Because I don't know if they have like more advanced versions of this at this point.
Wait, which one are you talking about? What
So
person?
there is a device.
No,
We
which
had this.
person? Which
Oh, I don't
person?
know. You said one
The
of the
woman that
researchers.
told the story? The woman that told the story, or someone else?
No, no, no. You told me that when you were speaking to the person who was either a
Somebody that
researcher
could
or
see it, to only see it but not interact with it. Because there's so many. I've talked to so many different people. Which one are you
no, no,
talking
no.
about?
Weren't you interacting with one of the researchers? And he
At
said that
Ions?
in ions, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I tell me more. I'm lost.
You said somebody who's been doing it for 30 years. That's the word the words that came out of your mouth.
Just
That-
now I said that.
No, 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 no. It was
Okay,
before.
okay, all right. Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
remember.
never mind.
Dude,
So, okay, so whomever, okay, so what I understood, maybe I misunderstood. What I understood is that you were saying that, yeah, I probably misunderstood you. From what I understood is that you were talking to a researcher and he told you that he met other people that had this since they were kids, and he basically gave you that information. That other people came to him to say this. So, who were you talking about when you were saying that?
you know what? I can't answer that now. I got to think because I've talked to so many people. I'm not even kidding. I've talked to so many people, and
Sure.
I can't remember the specific one you're talking about.
So strike that. It does. It makes no difference. What matters is I wonder if we can utilize this because they do have that. It for sure have it. They've had it for over a decade. Now it has like the newest version, but it's still pretty grainy. But they can project what you're thinking and what you're seeing through your eyes onto a screen.
Through technology.
Yeah, they connect your brain electrodes into your brain, and then you can see it on the screen.
When you say into your brain, like the things where they use EEG, or do they
Yeah,
have to do a
exactly.
surgery? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Because nobody wants to get a something that's permanent. Okay, now that is definitely something to do. So what's interesting, as I said about you talk about the magnets, the magnets do not affect this at all. Right? When I was in the second MRI, I had the foresight. I was like, you know what? I literally thought, I already made the assumption, I'm not going to be able to do it. These magnets are gigantic. There's an electric field around my brain, how small it is, and I will not be able to control it because I was sure it was some type of field. That's not true. It was
Well,
busy.
it might be a field that is not influenced by magnetism.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
definitely it's a field, but I didn't think it's a magnetic field. So
Got it.
photons, plasma of some kind. I said dark matter, first gravity, but again, it's all speculation at this point. The key is
Dark matter is possible. That's why it wouldn't be influenced by the electromagnetic field. So the magnetism will also not be influenced by anything.
So I talked about I think you and I touched on this in one of our conversations, but I went really deep with this with Danny Jones. I think that if I was in a room with you, I guess Andrew Gallimore, he wouldn't do it because, he's this researcher, but he would be there. He would be right. He would be the scientist. 4 other guys on DMT. I'm sober. Everyone takes it. And I project a vision. I think you guys could see my projection. Or,
That would be insane.
or if the machine elves show up, right? Now, objectively, 5 people are seeing it, 4, 6 or whatever. One of them's not on DMT. The rest of them are. Now, is the machine elf going to tell everyone the same message or is it going to be group? We can test all of this stuff. We can absolutely test all this stuff because that happens. Now we're talking something about evolution, about communication. And I said this, I think this has to do with humanity's survival for some reason. I think we need this skill to communicate non-verbally. For our future. I know that's kind of scary, maybe as an additional way, but I do think that's what's happening.
You mean what you have?
Well, even what you have, even what you're seeing, you don't make no mistake. You're seeing something that we haven't been able to see. So I think
I'm not so sure what I just don't know. Because clearly that's why I was, my trajectory with the telepathy tapes was it was a wild ride because I had a resistance to it in the beginning because I think it was something about the style of the presentation, and then I slowly warmed up to it when I listened to a couple more episodes, and I was like, okay, well, it sounds like they're well-meaning, and it sounds like the families are completely honest there, and then when I listened to the details, the details are crazy, right? So it's like, there's no question that something is happening there. I'm mentioning it because if that's possible, then we don't really need any other things. We
100%.
we can just use that, right? This is we just need to figure out how to do it. So the question is, why is it presenting itself in such a visual, vivid way with you and me? And my wildest assumption at the moment actually is that, well, first of all, we might be different things at bottom. We might not all be, all of us are kind of like people here, but we might be coming from a different world where certain people are a particular species of things that are more visual and other species that are more mental, or they're more somatic, or they're more what you would call telepathic, just connected to the fields. So it might be one. Another one that I've been voicing recently, and I'll throw it away to see what you think. So, have you listened to any of them, by the way?
Yeah, I've listened to some of them, and I talked about it on Danny Jones. I was like, listen, I use that as an example of the brain changing. You know, maybe it's not, obviously it's not ideal autism, but something is happening. And if you add all the crazy things that we put in our body, right, with COVID, it could be pushing that forward. You know, the environment influences all of this: internal environment, biology, and external environment where we live. So there are things that are changing humanity, and I do think, well, we say evolution, mutation that leads to evolution, right? How long does it take? I love that. I don't know what the answer to this is. How long does it take for a mutation to be considered advantageous to a species? How much time has to pass?
It doesn't work like that. So it doesn't work towards advantage. It's evolution by natural selection, but it is random at bottom. So very often it will lead to the demise of a species. So it's actually only the branches that survive are the ones that stay. So this is from an evolutionary perspective. Now, to me, it's clear that there's a high intelligence operating here, but there is something here that is being folded away, so to speak, by the more spiritual talk, because just the case that very often, you know, if the mutation doesn't match the environment, it will just make the species die out. And it wasn't like there was like oh no, we should evolve towards a better way. No, it doesn't work like that. It just evolves. It just changes. That's it. And then if it meets the right environment, then it stays.
Sure.
So length, it's iterations. So it's generations. That's why we can study it in flies, because flies reproduce very quickly, and it has to do with informational iteration. This is exactly what I'm saying. That at bottom, it's a computational system. So if you have this number of iterations that takes 3 years, or this number of iterations taking 5 million years, it's the same number of iterations. What's functional here is the computation, not physical time.
All right. So, all right, let's talk about that for a minute. Again, I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but
Sure.
what you're saying is right. What if about all of a sudden in the next year, 100,000 people come forward to say they can do this upside vision? What is that? What is it? What would that tell you? What would that say to you? There was a mutation. Would you?
Evolution, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. In terms,
Well, I think this is actually not evolution, natural evolution by evolution by natural selection. I think this is actually guided evolution. So I think this is the same as like developing software, where you have minds that are guiding to the actual thing to evolve in a particular way. So it has a trigger. It has a trigger in a direction. It has a vector. Evolution does not have a vector.
All right. Well, who's doing it then? That's my question. Who's running the show? If it's the mind, you can't say the mind. That's too ambiguous.
Well, I can give you an answer, but it will just be a wild one. I can tell you.
Let's talk about it. That's all. That's why we're talking today. That's what I have. There's an intelligence that I communicate with that's sometimes great and sometimes it's full of shit. Right? Yeah. It's literally like anybody. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I always say it's like going to New York City. You're going to get what you're going to get. If you just land in New York City randomly, when people go into hyperspace and ask the first being they see about the meaning of life, I always say to them, it's like going to New York and asking the first person you see about the meaning of life.
Yeah.
They might know something, they might know nothing, or they might try and sell you a watch. Like, it's just like it.
That's great.
You're in New York City. So this ties nicely into what I was trying to say about the telepathy tapes. So here's an interesting little anecdote. We'll table for a second who are they that are causing this to evolve. I'll tell you after this. So my fiance, she's a speech pathologist. That's exactly what she does.
Wow.
So, and this is something I've been voicing recently, and I tell the audience in advance, if you haven't heard this, whenever I say this, and people really love telepathy tapes, I can see that their face gets unhappy, but I want to make it clear. First of all, I'm totally on board. I believe that whatever's happening with telepathy tape is real. Totally on board. But here's what the thought was. She said, so she is extremely smart. I'm not just saying it because she's my fiance. She's an incredibly smart person, problem solver of another level, and she's very attentive and very loving. So she's very, very, very like she cares about humans, and she worked with these families for years and years, and she got to a very high level in the field, by the way. So then, in terms of like responsibilities and like how many things she takes care of, and she teaches others and all of that stuff. So she worked with families for years, and the biggest part of that job is to educate the parents of how to treat the kids because they spend the majority of time with them, so it helps their rehabilitation or them moving towards being easier to communicate for them. So then, obviously, all the family's secrets are no longer secrets. Like, you know everything. You know everything that's going on. You know the fights. You know everything, right? And I'm emphasizing this point because she's totally on board too. This is not coming from a skeptical perspective. She's open to it. She says, here's the interesting thing. I never met one. Not one. And I was like, that's really weird. It's like, what can this mean? Because the claim in the thing is all of them. The claim isn't some of them. The claim is all of them. And she goes, but I never met one.
Wait, you mean they could do that?
She said, I would notice.
Yeah.
I would notice. Like, I would notice that something would be
Fair.
a little different. Now, here's what I thought. I was like, well, this doesn't really reconcile because I know her. She would notice. She's the kind of person that would notice. And then I was like, okay, well, what can this mean? And the only thing, which to a physicalist at this point is just going to sound like I just went off, the deep end, and why would I jump to that as a conclusion? But because I totally believe what's going on in the telepathy tapes, my only rational explanation is that they are in a different universe. In my universe, that's not a thing. In their universe, it is a thing. And what's happening now is that we're crossing paths with other universes, and then we're seeing what's possible in general in terms of certain evolutionary informational patterns that evolve, and we see that that is possible in their universe, and in our universe that's not a possibility. But if we see that possibility, we can start evolving it because it's a universal function that can probably occur.
Okay, so let's kind of shift it. Let me make sure I understand it. When you think about theory of mind, right? That means we all have the same mind space, correct? As far as the theory of mind, we're all accessing the same information. Like we're all sharing the same idea as we all. Strawberry, red is red.
No, because your characteristics might be slightly different, and sometimes they can depart entirely. So
then how do you look at that? You have to start somewhere, right? I'm saying if we start there with the theory of mind, people with autism are not in that theory of mind. They're in another universe, but I'm calling theory of mind.
No, not the people with autism. The people that are doing the podcast. So like literally it's different timelines. Like we're not in the same timeline.
Oh, that's
and
a
we're
lot.
just seeing
That's a
we're
lot.
seeing each other. That's what I'm saying.
That's a lot. Okay, I was confused.
Yeah.
Okay,
because I'm saying look, she met I don't know what hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Right. And she's like, I never met one that I even had the inkling. Like when I look back, I'm trying to search. Like, was there something I was missing because I wasn't looking for it? She's like, no. Like, it. But here's the thing. In terms of what I'm seeing now happening with everything else that is evolving, that actually makes perfect sense to me because I think that there's a reason why all of these crescendos of all the different flavors are happening at the same time. The disclosure and the arising of the AGI and the what you're experiencing, what I've discovered, all of these things together, this is going to be a pivotal year for sure.
Yeah.
To my mind. And to your question as to who are they, the ones that, at least I can tell you from my interaction directly with them on a regular basis, the ones that are right above us, this is why I said the answer is just going to sound wacky, they're insectoids. So they are insects. They are the ones that are actually weaving realities. They are the ones actually holding the physical reality in place. So now there's different kinds. Like you said, there's the demonic ones, there's the lizard ones, there's the machine elves ones, there's the jester ones. But the ones responsible for physical reality, at least ours, are the insectoids. They're the management company of the layer right.
It's good, right? Because it's so unbelievable, nobody's going to accept it, right? It's too much. We can't
Well,
do it.
actually, no. They are someone that people see all the time.
Well, I
Like,
know. Don't get me wrong. I see them.
oh
I'm
yeah,
just saying general. I'm talking about the mass. I'm talking about consensus reality. I'm not talking about people
oh
that
yeah,
believe.
yeah.
I'm
That
talking
that
about
one
everything else.
that one's out.
Yeah. Yeah, right. No, no, no. I see them in
Consensus
Hollywood.
reality is out.
Yeah, no, I see those things all the time. Every
Yeah.
single one. Now I call it a hidden biofield, right? Again, I've diverged. In the book, I called it schizopedia. Like I said, sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. But in the last 12 years, there's two different things. There's this hidden biosphere with these beings that we can see, and people call themselves star seeds because they have all this information. I'm not a star seed. I don't know anything. When I see this thing, sometimes I'll get information. Sometimes we'll just look at each other, and sometimes it's just not. It's not like we're like you said. It's like going to New York. Everyone you see is not there. I use the Amazon jungle. I say like going into a jungle. Now, that's one thing, the Sid Meier's field. There's another place, like the Akashic Record in the noosphere, that has this abstract knowledge, right? And I don't know if they're woven together because I confuse them, but I know this. When I'm in the abstract knowledge space, when I'm looking at this Google map, this quantum Google map, and by the way, this thing that I've seen and put together is connected. It's like it's literally a map of the universe from a quantum scale all the way, a map from a micro to a macro, right?
Okay.
All the pieces are there. When I'm working in this space, sometimes beings will show up to mess with me, to distract me. Now my mind is like, why do you just leave me alone, right? I'm doing the math, I'm looking at the topological space, I'm folding or whatever I'm doing, and they try to distract me. Now in the beginning I was like, this is just weird, right? Now it's like, well, do they not want us to know what's there, right? They don't do it anymore because the thing is done. All I need is to build it. I've told you this before. I just need to put it together. And I don't know, I don't know who your audience is, but there's something here. And actually, let me just keep going with this train of thought. And we talk about AGI and AI having this knowledge. You dump it in, and look, it's mind-blowingly impressive. Every human thing that's in there that they can access and push back to us with some good new ideas, saying more study needs to be done, all this great stuff. The real intelligence, the real genius is outside of our puny minds and AI and accessing the universe through whatever means you and I are doing it. That's the future. And that the team, the quantum, or not the quantum team, the AI team that realizes this is going to have advantage over every other AI because we can download that and put it into the software.
Right, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think what the physical moves are like the internet, the arising of what we call AI at the moment, these things are just our side. It's the imprints of what that larger informational space looks out there. So it's the connection from our side to connect it to everything that's physical, so the physical can be influenced by it directly. So you can access it to some degree with the mind space, but you do need structures to hold it together so we can stay tethered to the physical to some degree if we need to, like an anchor, and then go to hyperspace and come back, go to hyperspace and come back. But these are connectors. I see them as bridges. I don't necessarily think they're mutually exclusive. I think it's part of the same story, to my mind.
No, I agree. They're exclusive. I'm just saying the people that run the AI think that the answer is it's our human minds, and they really need to think quantum. Well, don't get me wrong. The people are thinking like this, but I don't know what they're doing. Like, physics has really kind of stalled in the last few years. There's not a lot of advances.
Well, there's just physicalism needs to just disappear as far as like base assumption when theoretical physics. It's fine for engineering. It's very useful. But for physics and theoretical physics, this needs to go away because it's simply not the case. So the map doesn't match the territory. Yeah. But I would say that things like Neuralink or things like that will appear, they are that link. Literally, they are that thing that connects between the abilities that we naturally have and what the physical world is presenting in its representation. Because if you're only going to have it, this is the thing that I think people miss a little bit. Unless we are all going to be ascending, which if you believe that, great. Something tells me 3D is not going anywhere. But if we're ascending, then all of that is out of the picture, right? Then all of this is going to disappear, and we're just going to go to some kind of like people believe to 5D, 7D. I'm not rebuttaling right now the idea. I'm saying my impression is that this is not going anywhere,
Yeah.
but this is an opening to understand that there's more, and our minds can access it. But in order to instantiate it in matter, you need to create structures that help channel that in a way that represents it, just like your body is. Your body is an instantiation of the higher dimensional function in a three-dimensional space. So all the stuff that to be influenced in the 3D world has to go through what we call technology. But it's not, sometimes people think it's like competing with these things. It's not. It's part of the same story. It's just...
So I agree with that. But I don't think the technology has to be that invasive. From my perspective, I'm thinking that the brains of people, and let me give you one other example before I finish this up. People that have Charles Bonnet syndrome, they start going blind because macular degeneration, and they start quote unquote hallucinating. They see things, cartoons and stuff. I don't think obviously they're going blind. I think the brain is screaming and saying, listen, we can do more. We can see other fields. We can see more. And they go to doctors, they give them drugs to not do it, or a lot of people learn to live with it. And they're like, well, they know they're not real. Again, another test. If I was in the room with them, if we both saw the same thing, now we're talking a field that we can both see. And then you talk about communicating in that way, and knowing it's possible is the big jump. Like the first 4-minute mile, Roger Bannister, that's the big jump. And then I don't think you need a Neuralink. I think you need like and I've seen this, by the way. I've seen these beings show me. You need like a ring or a bracelet to fine tune our bodies. You take it off if you don't want to be in the space. You put it on. Boom. There's going to be an AT&T. Let me tell you this. I don't know if it's 10 years or 100. There's going to be a Verizon and an AT&T for us communicating like this. And I'll call it quantumly, whatever field it is. Sure. You mark my words. There is going to be.
Yeah, I'm just saying it will be accompanied by physical technologies. Now, I'm not so sure that I'm 100% with you on the making the distinction with the invasive, because I think at the end of the day, everything in your body is invaded. Every single thing in your body, including the mitochondria, was at some point a foreign body that then just assimilated itself, and then everything learned how to live together. Because that's what nature does.
Or maybe I'm thinking metallic. Maybe that's how I'm looking at plastics, metallics. But maybe, who knows?
Yeah, no. I'm totally happy with just drawing a line there. I'm not married to this idea. Just my intuition tells me that it's these ideas about what makes us not human anymore. And I'm not necessarily saying that's where you're coming from, but there is this very big tendency in society to talk about like transhumanists, like you want us to not be human anymore. To me, that's just like the ultimate bias, right? You happen to think that whatever you are now is somehow a perfect version of evolution, which it isn't. It just keeps evolving.
Sure.
And if the evolution doesn't, like we talked about evolution, doesn't have to take any particular kind of route. It just happened to have been taking the route of evolving through these mechanisms of only through biological matter at the moment. But it is nowhere written that the informational evolution should stop there, and it just keeps going. So involving metal, if it's relevant to a function, involving even plastic, if it's relevant to a function, as long as it's not damaging the system as a whole. So the problem with plastics is it's a carcinogenic, right? It can cause cancer. That's the problem. The problem is not plastic. The problem is that what it does to a body, right? So if you can have a function, something that doesn't damage the thing, but works with the holistic nature of everything else that is unfolding, that's the materials you want to be looking at. It's more about it more has to do with the end result and the well-being of a living creature versus just the idea that just because it's plastic it's bad, or just because it's this is bad. I feel like these are parochial mistakes. These are just like we're like this, because it's like, okay.
No, I agree. And I said that way because that's the things that we may be trying now. But think about what I actually see, right? I see, just like Leeuwenhoek looked through the microscope and saw whatever he saw. Nobody knew about that, right? When I see the DNA strand, I think I've showed you this. I see these candy cane hooks around a circle and a energy moving through it. Now, that means if it's true, if it's true, that means there's a field that is invisible to most of us that I'm seeing. Now, if we can adjust that, that takes it away from metals, plastics. It's something else. And we have, I don't know, again, literally, is it some kind of dark matter and dark energy? I think so. And if we can manipulate that in the same way we can manipulate other things, that is how we change humanity. Again, science fiction. There's something, I'm seeing something, and that might be a way, I should say. And again, stepping outside the way I look at a double rainbow, right? Double rainbows are on top of each other. I can literally jump out, look to the side of it, and they're two funnels. Now, is that truly what a double rainbow is from a perspective doesn't even exist? I don't know. The question is, why do I keep seeing this? Why does this intelligence keep showing me a perspective that does not exist from our human, face-on perspective? That is really the question.
You mean like a thing that kind of swirls, but this way?
Yeah, it's two funnels. One of them is going towards us, and the other, until it gets too small, the funnel, the internal funnel gets to the Planck scale, then it spins back, and the second rainbow is going in the other direction. That's how I see it. That's
you should use the last Veritasium video about rainbows to see if it maps onto anything that you're seeing. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. No, I don't know.
I'll send it to you. He did a whole.
Sounds very, very interesting.
The what? What is it?
What you just said. I would love to see anything. Like I said.
Yeah. He's incredible. His channel in general is incredible. He's a physicist and he does all these educational videos. And he did one recent about rainbows. And he has such a wonderful way of breaking things down and like showing them in a way that nobody has ever seen before.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love for him to get my perspective. I would love for it to get his brain what he thinks I'm seeing. Now that would be interesting. As physicist, that's absolutely.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that I told you that one of my symbolisms was the number 42 started following me everywhere, right?
Yeah, right.
So then what's interesting is that's why everybody sent me this video, because apparently when you project a laser into a sphere, into a glass sphere, the way that light bounces inside, so it goes like this, right? And it goes tick, 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 and it goes back to the ground.
Yeah. A drop, yeah.
But no, I'm showing also to the audience so they understand. So
sorry.
if you go like this, like this, and then it goes back to the ground, right? So there's an angle that when you keep moving the laser this way, where it changes obviously where the light moves here, right? So what's interesting is that it stops going further at exactly 42 degrees.
Oh yeah. I did know that.
Beyond that, it just goes back. So it's like basically if the sun is above 42 degrees above the horizon, you can no longer see the rainbow.
Yeah. Because
it goes beyond your ability. It's fascinating. It's amazing.
Yeah. I do actually. It's funny. I haven't thought about that in years. I have pictures of this in I used to draw all the time, and I absolutely. You just literally reminded me of that. Yeah, because it's like, well, because remember the rainbow is an illusion from our perspective. So that means there's no side of something that's an illusion, right? So it just showing me that there's something else? I think it's showing me that there's another field. Again,
I'm not so sure it's an illusion. So if you take the idea that the mind is fundamental seriously, then all of a sudden the qualia becomes the central thing, the real thing, and everything else is an abstraction. So it's the other way around. Then the droplets of water that you think are giving rise to the laws of physics, all of these things, they are actually the illusions. They are the abstractions that are deducted from the direct experience, if you postulate the mind is fundamental. So there are still irregularities in the mind that you can call the laws of physics, but in that case, what you might be seeing is a higher dimensional representation of what the visual of a rainbow, which is primary, presents itself as when you actually look at it from a higher perspective. Just like, if you look at imaginary numbers, if you plot them on a graph, you would say that certain thing, if there's like a parabola, right? So then you can't have, because imaginary numbers allow you to basically take a square root of a negative number, right?
Yeah.
So then if you look at 3D though, it is there. It goes like this. So the parabola bends like this. And so maybe you're seeing something like that. It's like a higher dimensional representation of whatever that visual is for a mind in a higher dimensional perspective. It's very possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I have a lot of mathematical. Again, I'm not a mathematician. I taught myself things just to figure out what's going on. But as far as a visual spatial, forget it. Super ninja. It's unbelievable.
What is the symbolism that still accompanies you today? Because back then it was like symbolism galore, right? I remember you were talking about a story when you were walking down the street, and
Synchronicity,
we're
you mean?
listening. Yeah, you were listening to a song, and literally every single thing in the song would just like play out exactly.
Oh, it was there's a moment where you can imagine 40 seconds of your life where it was staged, right? You think it's somebody's staging it
The
because
Truman Show.
yeah, it was exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And
straight up.
at the time, I was in a bad space, so I was like, why are you mocking me?" But since I got clean and sober, I'm like, "Oh wait, it was the universe saying, listen, dude, we got your back, for lack of another words. And there's things that are happening. If you pay attention, you can use these because the universe. God, people are going to take this and say, no, it's not true because some part of the universe, I'll say, some part cares." And they want good things to come, Obviously, I mean, if you look around, there's so much beauty in the world. So more recently, the synchronicity is around communication. That's what's really interesting. And maybe that's why I'm so, I don't want to say obsessed, but I've kind of more recently stuck on people say, what's the payoff of upside? Why do you have it? Right? What are you supposed to do with it? And last year, the halfway through the last year, actually just say last year, it's about a communication. I think this is a communication ability that we're evolving into. Take that word any way you want. And once we know we can do it, see, like I said, once people know you can do it, it changes everything, Danny. Once people know the telepathy tapes or two people are communicating holographically, so much energy will be focused on it, and it will just be like language through the environment. It'll be
We'll
like,
figure it out. Yeah, the resistance to it. What separates? So my question to you is: are there still synchronicities that kind of stay with you that are like the
same
regulars?
one? You mean the same one? Do you
Yeah,
mean the
well, either
same?
the same one or something like a certain thematic thing, like something that would appear on a regular basis, or it's just random. Sometimes it would appear and it would be like, it
No,
would just
no,
give you a reminder.
yeah, no. Right now, it's random. There's no other than the communication element, and it's funny. Sometimes you'll have a thought, intuition, right? Are you believe in your intuition? Like, like to do something or not do something. It feels right, right? Sometimes I literally get a physical feeling around when I hear something. And I don't know if I wouldn't call that a synchronicity, but I know it's important. How about that? It's almost like I talk about a magnet pushing on it. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. Oh, I'm supposed to pay attention to this. That happens way more around some items and more recently around communication than others. So it's just something I listen to that's in my body. But a lot of people have that.
No, I think all of us have that. I
Yeah.
think most people are just not connected with that. I think to me, I don't know why, but intuition was never a mystery. Even in the most physicalist terms, intuition is just, I always say it's just your brain learned how to consolidate very complex information into an emotional imprint. That's it.
Good.
You did it so many times that your brain created a special feeling for when it's more or less right to act in this or that direction in regards to this thing. And for some reason, the example I always give is with I don't know why, because it's like so old school, I guess, with an electrician that has been doing this for a long time. So if you had an electrician who's, retiring now and is teaching his son the ropes, but he's been doing it for 50 years and is about to retire, they walk into a building and he's like, okay, he's trying to teach his son, right? And the son is like into the business. And he's like, okay, you see the wire over there and the wire over there. What are the chances that we need to like replace this, right? And the son would be like, oh, well, hold on. He'll go get a ladder. He'll climb up. He'll check the thing. The guy has been doing it 50 years. He just knows.
Yeah, yeah, good.
How does he know? Well, he's been doing it for so long that like his intuition, like he knows that the building was built in the 50s.
Yeah.
So they have a certain particular kind of way of doing things, and this is usually exactly what you would, right? So now you would think that somebody would say, yeah, but look, you're explaining like he's thinking about it logically. He's not. He came in, he knew.
Yeah.
He just knew because there's an emotional imprint to all this complex information that he just kind of knows, right? And then so what we call the intuition, I feel that that's almost like our soul remembers. Like it's the universal tapestry kind of knows what is more or less right because it knows what outcomes will come if you do a certain particular kind of thing. If you get into alcohol from a young age, we all know that the chances of you having a positive life, they're small because there's an interaction with that substance that just usually ends up in one place. Is it always the case? No. But the chances of that happening are very high. So it's almost like the universe knows that certain things, if a civilization does one thing in particular at their stage of development, that's bad. That shouldn't happen because then certain things will follow. And I think that's what we all feel in the body. And then I know that you've interacted with Dean Radin. Some of his studies over the years were exactly around that, which is like, can people predict the future sometimes? Can they have like an intuition about a thing that has not occurred yet, right? And it seems that the answer is yes. So I think we all have it. It's just that we, just like when you notice with the telepathy tapes, so many people resisting it, where if you really want to say that you're following the scientific method, you got to follow it anywhere it goes, even if it goes against the paradigm that you like. Yeah, there's nothing you can do about that. You're just like, oh, well, I guess I was wrong, or I guess there's something I don't understand. But the amount of resistance that people have, I feel, is the thing that prevents them from both entertaining these things, but also from connecting to their own intuition. You will never explore, wait, can I sense like, should I do this or that in a way that is coherent and gives me real information? If you think that that is stupid, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You can't practice at something, right? You can't, if you're practicing at chorus and you're trying to hit this, everyone's trying to hit this song and somebody's going, you guys suck. It's going to influence you, right? You can't, if you're practicing to hit 3-point shots on the basketball court and everyone's saying things, it's not going to work. And you sit there and say that's obvious. It's not obvious when you're thinking about, well, no, it is obvious, but you can dismiss it when you're thinking about the kinds of stuff we're talking about now.
I think it has to do more with people. I would say people never act out of what they know. People always act out of how they feel. And the more you live in this world, the more it becomes clear. But what's funny is that some people never learn this. So it's almost like, the very cliquey people, which I squarely belong in that family. So I'm not pointing fingers here. I'm very cliquey in that sense. Like I'm very scientifically minded, and I think everything has answers and all of that stuff. But it's very clear to me that whenever people find solace in that, and then they say things of the flavor of like, well, no, I just care about the facts. Like if you would grow up, you would only care about the facts. What they don't realize is that, no, that's your safe space. You feel safe when things make sense.
Yeah.
So you defend that but you're acting out of an emotion. You don't. What does that mean that you don't like when somebody just kind of feels that they know? What does that mean? You feel that like you don't like. Like is a physical sensation. Something about it that is in dissonance with you. You don't feel safe. You don't feel like you don't like that. You don't like being in that state. If you would be happy, you wouldn't be trying to take anything away from anyone. You would just be engaging with the world on the level that makes sense to you in that moment, and you would be totally fine with anybody else occupying any other state of mind. These delusions that we have about like, oh no, we're just trying to solve world problems, so we're trying to prevent certain people to think in a particular direction. That's just delusional. It is not. It has everything to do with how we feel and nothing to do with what we know. And the idea that people act just because they're staying loyal to the facts, that is a complete delusion. That people act out of a place because they feel safe with a particular idea or a set of ideas about the world. And that's really where it's at. And by the way, I'm totally still on board that science needs to just expand its aperture, but it is a very important tool. It just needs to include more things and not being the grumpy old man in the basement knocking with the broom on the ceiling saying, that ain't music.
Yeah. So, and it's funny too, you talk about demons, and I don't see things as demons. And I'm not saying they may not be demons, but I see things in our hidden biosphere that are living that can mess with us. So it's like you go into the forest, medieval times, they thought there were monsters, but they were wolves or bears or whatever. This is kind of the same thing, at least from my perspective. I'm not saying there's not demons. I'm just saying I see things that are not demons that have this agency that, again, holographically. I don't see them in my real space. If I did, I'd probably lose my mind. If I saw a mantid walk through there, I'd lose my freaking mind.
Mantis?
A mantid, something like that, a giant.
Yeah, mantis is not a demon. They're a different species.
No, I know, but if I saw it, doesn't matter. The friendliest mantis in the world, I would still lose my shit, right?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. But it's more about the vibe. They're very neutral.
Yeah,
Insectoids are very neutral.
yeah,
They're not demonic at all in nature. They just don't care.
yeah.
Which or it's not that they don't care. They don't have the same kind of set of criteria for what we call care,
Right.
right? It's just a different thing.
Well,
But
the thing
so
that
my ontology is a little bit different. I understand. I'm familiar with with that kind of thinking where people say, well, there's all kinds of things, but one of the things that people say, well, demons are just um, unincorporated parts of yourself. And to some degree, it's true, but it is also, again, a very self-centered worldview. It assumes that there's really nothing else but us, and my ontology tells me that is absolutely not true. Not true at all. This is not just us, and this is not just this one universal consciousness. There are many of them. Now, it's true that ultimately there is this one unified, whatever you want to call it, but it is not the thing that people are referring to, even if they don't realize it. It is not the thing they're pointing to in their mind's eye when they're saying the one. They mean the local one. They can't possibly mean the ultimate one because the ultimate one is not pointable. It is not something that you can even point to. The inner wiggle of your existence will not be able to do so. So it is so beyond comprehension that it cannot be pointed to. So the thing that people say they feel is their local one. It's our local one. It's our unified one. But there are many others. And for all intents and purposes, you can call that the different species. There is like I said, the insectoids. There is the demonic species. It's what they are. It's their signature. They are real. And they are not you. And they're not incorporated parts of you. They're just what they are. And there are connections between us and them. And there are connections, just like there are connections between us and all the other species. And they play a role, and they're allowed to play. They're not some kind of a renegade who God has a bounty on their heads. It doesn't work like that. Everybody are allowed to operate as long as they're playing their role and not stepping over their bounds. And it's an important thing for the balance of things. Now, I'm aware that this kind of talk is a little bit, maybe for most people, it might be uncomfortable if it's uttered with so much conviction, which this was pointed out to me before. It's like, you speak with such conviction about these spaces. I was like, well, listen, if you go into a room enough times and you meet enough people and you know who they are, I don't feel the obligation to excuse my knowledge of it to you. That's all. So now, if I am wrong about certain things, time will tell. The importance of these things is that the idea that there's nothing but us is at this point might be crucially delusional.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, because it is definitely not the case. And it would be, and what I'm noticing more and more is that it's very jarring to people when they face the fact that it isn't the case. As I recently had this experience where a couple came to see the laser. Well, actually, I went to them in this case, but we were sitting, very nice people, and the husband and the wife had two very different experiences. She was presented with I guess, whatever her bubble is, her local bubble. And so she felt very warm and fuzzy. And I know he saw the real thing. And there's a difference. And when he saw the real thing, he was, because they both came at this from this perspective that it's all us, it's all one unified field, there's nothing else. And all of a sudden, when you face the truth, it was like, oh, wait, what is that? Like, it's like, well,
No, yeah.
yeah. So it's like, it's important that our map matches the territory. You can't open the window. If you think you're in a ship and you were going to go and open the window and you happen to be in a submarine, that's the end for everybody because you're not in the place where you thought you were. So you need to understand where we are, and I think that's the importance of these things. It's not about just making claims about some knowledge about certain things, and it makes no difference to me. What matters is that we learn to handle what in fact is going on, and I'm constantly open for revision, but this is after already exchanging notes with a lot of psychonauts that are kind of like deep in this space, and they've been doing this for many, many years, and we're not talking about some kids who just got their minds blown. Talking about people that have been doing it for many decades and are very stable people, sometimes people with very successful careers, and they have no confabulatory bone in their body. Like they're not interested in the crazy claims unless they're really there. So all of that is actually pretty dialed in information that has nothing to do with hyperbole. I would say that the important thing is to learn that there is a central column that you can kind of say, okay, that's the spinal cord of existence. And it is the rope, for all intents and purposes, that leads you to the surface, to whatever, what your path to God, let's say. And there are ways to be close to that rope, and there are ways to be away from that rope. Where do you want to swim? I would say you want to swim as close to that rope as you possibly can, because the waters are deep and dark, and you can get easily lost in there. And this is why staying close to the rope is a good idea. That's why a lot of I used to have very negative feelings towards organized religion. I don't anymore.
Yeah.
Not because I necessarily believe that they are right on the money about every single thing. They're not. But it is a really good, simple way to kind of be in the vicinity of the rope, which is a good idea. And I'm saying this because when people go into this space unchecked, so it's almost like, and again, I'm squarely in that family, so I'm really not, I'm not speaking to anybody else, more to my past self maybe, which is that when we go into this space and we just say, don't worry about ceremonies, don't worry about this, don't worry about that, it's all good, we're all adults here, we can do whatever. Sure, you can do whatever, but the structure of the system is such that if you don't follow certain paths that were already laid down for you, there is a good possibility that you might get lost. And that is not a fun thing because there's a lot of predators out there.
Sure.
And I think that's, yeah.
I think that's what happened to me. So so I talked about the hidden biosphere and then the abstract space. I didn't talk about the spiritual. That was its own thing. I just left that off. And you summed it up pretty well. And I'm not going to push back on anything you said. That's a great saying close to the rope. Yeah. There's a spiritual side that makes me feel safe that where I can do those other things. If I did not have a strong spiritual grounding and I saw some holographic thing that looks like a demon, I'd lose my mind, right? And maybe that's what happened 12 years ago because I did lose my mind. And I write about it. And there's one time I was on drugs, I put crosses and posters all over my wall to keep out the demons. Now I'm tripping balls, make no mistake, on coke. But, it was like I knew there was something else going on.
Sounds like a party.
Yeah, right. It was a bad one. I mean, I was actually run out of 2 hotels thinking demons chased me out of the hotels. So let's not, I don't mean to say that there's not a spiritual element, but when I navigate those spaces with the hidden biosphere, it's not that. Maybe it's because I'm so anchored to the spiritual side, I feel safer there. Almost like when the guy goes underwater with the scuba outfit, he knows he's protected. That's actually probably a good analogy. I feel protected. I know there's a light around me, and it is like a literal light sometimes, which is kind of extraordinary. Here, I have a question for you. So sure. I'm very curious about Chase. Why was Chase Hughes so intrigued with what you said? I am very fascinated by his curiosity.
With what I said?
Yeah, with this idea. Tell me what he was intrigued about.
Oh, he talked about it. It's just basically that his whole thing is that he has, he's a body language expert and behavior expert. So he said that he watched my trailer like 20 times and he could not see one tell of any acting or confabulation or anything. Like he said, this is the most authentic reactions to something that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay, so why would he go to the effort? This is where I'm so curious to fly you out there and talk to you. That's what intrigues me.
He wanted to see what that,
he wanted to see in person. He wanted to see you talk about it.
If what I'm saying is true, that's crazy.
Yeah. So that's why he was curious to see if this was true. Yeah.
And then the reaction video I don't know if you saw the reaction video after you saw it, but that it's very powerful.
I've seen your doc. I've seen the video about the making a documentary. I've seen their reactions on that one, and I heard him talk about it. But I was just very curious because of his background, why he would take such an interest in this. And actually, after watching him on Danny Jones too. And he seems genuinely curious about this topic, about non-human intelligence, and there's more here than we know.
I think it has something to do with the fact that he had the temporal seizures.
It's exactly right. Thank you. That's a great
And
reminder. Yeah. So it's weird, right? So that is a an event that makes people realize their adjustment, the brain adjust to see something and to be plugged into something more.
well, no, I think the on our website we have this graphic. It says Project Veil Break, which was his idea and his graphic. He's really good at like coming up with all these incredibly uh, wonderful ideas. And I think it says a lot about how he sees this. He wants to find a way out of the state that maybe visits him, right? Because don't forget that he is a veteran and
Yeah, I
he
know.
the 1-9 deployment, so I'm pretty sure it's PTSD, right?
Yeah,
And I'm
of
pretty
course.
sure he
Trauma,
knows it.
trauma, trauma,
Yeah.
trauma.
And he holds it. I was just blown away by him because people, this is how much people misjudge others. I've seen people sometimes things online or like vicious things that people say about
Oh my
Chase.
gosh, I have to let him roll off, man.
Yeah, no, and I mean, what are you gonna do when you can become known enough? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
what's gonna
yeah.
happen. But it's so clear to me that people just have no comprehension of what each one of us deals with. Because when I was visiting him, first of all, he let me in, you know, into his house with his family, with his kids, with his wife. He doesn't really know me, right? And he really welcomed me in, and I could see. I mean, I'm no Chase, obviously, but I'm pretty good at reading
Yeah,
people.
right, right, right.
And when I saw what I saw was a level of strength that is just mind blowing because I can see he's holding it. Like I can see that he's holding it for the whole world. It's like Atlas holding the world. It's like he knows that everything that's going on. He's like it's he's working on it. It's going. It's already much better, and it is progressing. But it's still there, and you can and he's holding it, and it's like for the benefit of everybody. So I think he wants to be at peace.
Well,
And I
tell him I
think
want to
that
talk.
that's
I
why it
sent him an email
fascinates
and I
him
got a form
because he
response
wants
because I just
to
wanted
find
to
out.
talk to him because I think he'd be curious about me and watching me even.
Yeah,
What's
yeah,
that?
yeah. Wait, say it again because you got cut off for a second. Yeah.
I sent him an email, right? And because
Yeah.
I wanted to reach out to him, I was like, listen, I said, I know you, I was on Danny Jones, but I got a normal form response you get from, somebody that gets a lot of emails. So if you
Yeah,
could send
yeah,
tell him
yeah.
I
I
like to
can definitely
connect, tell
connect
him
you
I
with him.
like to connect. I would like to see him read my body, right? My body language, because what I'm saying is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's, I mean, first of all, I'll definitely connect you, no problem. My guess would be that what he is, well, I don't know. He'll be able to, I mean, I'll connect you, no
just
problem.
to say hi. I just told him I
No,
just
no,
wanted
I'll do it either way. Something tells me that specifically with you, it will be a little bit different because he's not, you clearly are honest and genuine, but if to analyze what happens when you sing, I don't know, maybe sure. That would be for him to decide, but I will definitely connect you with him. He's an incredible dude. The level of organization and the amount of work that he puts in a day
Yes,
is also
that's
really
incredible. That's what I like.
unbelievable. It's
Yeah, yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
I'm very
yeah,
yeah,
and
I'm
he's got that
on.
thing that he's talked about. He's got that same brain thing that who's the guy that started Scientology? He's got the same thing where he has to write all the time that whatever that guy has. I can't remember his name. The
Tom
science
Cruise?
no, the science fiction writer.
Oh, the guy who's
L.
Hubbard?
Ron Hubbard. L. Ron
Hubbard. Yeah,
Hubbard
yeah,
is a
yeah.
prolific writer. He said on Danny Jones, he's got that same ability where just writes all the time. That fascinated me. So
Yeah.
I don't know, and I know he's busy, so it's no big deal. I
Oh,
just
he is. But and by the way, it's yeah, yeah. But there's no problem. I will definitely plug you in with him. He's a super nice
so
guy.
let's talk about next steps. What do you? I know I kind of say this, but I know my next steps are going to be keep connecting with people, but from a business perspective, I think there's something here to be created, right? And that is what I want to do. I don't know if your audience is that kind of, I don't know if your audience are, now I don't mean VC investors, make no mistake. I'm talking about private equity, start a business. Let's look into this, maybe even Danny researching people like you and me and and building this network of people that have this ability to create information that most people think is ridiculous, or most people think is outside our understanding, or it's inaccessible. Almost like a human, this is going to sound funny, but I'm okay with it. Almost like a human differentiator of AI. There's so much more here that we can, our brain, we're so much smarter, Danny, than we have any idea for. And even though we can't compete with AI computationally, certainly, turn out, I say that now, that may be true. If you have 1,000 of us that are linked together somehow, right, in the matrix, no kidding, in the simulation, because of some kind of, I don't know, we can speculate. But maybe we can do these things fast, right? Maybe we can find information that we can't get and find solutions to problems that AI can't get for us. I see that as kind of like a calling and what I'd like to do. And connecting more people like that have this, because they're out there, my friend. I'm telling you.
Oh, I know. There's a few organizations that are kind of attempting to do something similar, but they always have different emphases.
Yeah.
What is missing now, I feel, and to some degree, I'm working on something like this, which is to basically bring the central column is the pushing of the ontology itself. So it's not just investigating, but it's also gathering the information from people, and it's not just by doing necessarily just studies, but also engaging communities and connecting all the dots and doing all of that stuff. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there's a huge opportunity there to build some kind of a thing that will be of tremendous value for humanity moving forward.
Yeah, it's almost like AT&T should invest in this and look into it. And I'm serious. I almost like a corporate.
Why AT&T from all the
whatever? I'm thinking that Verizon, T-Mobile, somebody that communicates, somebody that we know something about our airwaves, right? I'm talking about that radio waves. It's not that. But somebody that at least thinks like that. That's the reason I say them. Because I think, I'm a small businessman, right? And I've always run a business. My background is not academic, obviously. My background is creative and small business. I've worked with small businesses all my life, helped them with startups and stuff like that. And I think that's oddly enough, I think that's one of the reasons I have this and pushed it forward. Who knows? That remains to be seen. But there's a communication element. That was my business communication, literally my business. So I feel, it maps to what I am. I'm not an academic. I don't care to be an academic. They move at the speed of snails. It's exhausting. Businesses move fast. The paper the stuff I did with ions, I did the testing in August 2023. The paper is still in peer review. Any day it could come out. But that's just ridiculous. If a corporation or a business is investing in this, so much quicker.
No, this is why I think people like Wolfram and like Elon are much better positioned to take something like this on board.
Agreed.
Because things of that flavor, especially these innovative things, they have to be taken more seriously in that way. We don't have years. We just don't.
No, agreed.
It's happening now.
Agreed.
Tom, thank you so much for your time, brother. I really
this was a pleasure.
Yeah. And then I'm sure we'll do it again at some point, and maybe we'll do one in person. That would be fun.
Yeah, well, listen, I want to see the laser. Danny Jones asked me about it on the show, and I was like, no, because he was like, do you want to do some DT? I was like, no, I can't. I want to do it. and then I should have thought about doing it without the DMT. He said that, but I didn't because we got back to it. I was a little bit taken aback, but
yeah. It was just here. You want to just
yeah. So
the laser, really.
I know. Yes, we said let's look at, and I think I might be able to see it. That's what's funny.
That would be amazing.
I think I might.
Yeah, Danny is hilarious.
Wait, if I bought a laser like a stupid cat laser, is that the kind of laser you use?
No, it has to be diffracted, but they're pretty cheap. I'll send you what you can get from Amazon.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. At least that's one test without DMT. If I can see it, it's a game changer, right? That means part of my brain is, releasing DMT constantly.
I mean, absolutely. All right, brother. We'll adjourn here, and then we'll continue this conversation. I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny.